My boyfriend mocked my dull dad's guitar skills until dad pulled out his old six string and played like a rock legend. Turns out he gave up 3 platinum albums to raise me. After that, Leo, my boyfriend, started a full-blown social media war to tear my whole family apart using my stolen diary and screenshots. It ended with both of us getting restraining orders and having to transfer schools. That's when I found out he'd been targeting me from the start because military and law enforcing families were his thing. My dad has always been the definition of boring. Khakis every day, same haircut since '95, drives a beige minivan that permanently smells like old coffee. When Leo asked to come over for dinner last month, I nearly said no. Leo was everything Dad wasn't. Starting quarterback, played guitar in a band, walked with that kind of confidence that made people part for him in the hallways. "Your dad seems nice," Leo said when we pulled up to our quiet suburban house. I could tell he was already judging Mom's collection of lawn gnomes. Dinner started off fine. Dad asked Leo about school and football. Mom served her famous pot roast. Then Leo spotted the old upright piano in the corner of the living room, and it all unraveled. "You guys play?" he asked, even though he clearly knew the answer. "Only the cat," I said. "Not really," Dad added, quietly, cutting his roast into perfect cubes like he always did. Leo grinned, and I knew that look. It was the same one he wore before wrecking someone on the field. "Your dad seems nice," Leo said when we pulled up to our quiet suburban house. I could tell he was already judging Mom's collection of lawn gnomes. Dinner started off fine. Dad asked Leo about school and football. Mom served her famous pot roast. Then Leo spotted the old upright piano in the corner of the living room, and it all unraveled. "You guys play?" he asked, even though he clearly knew the answer. "Only the cat," I said. "Not really," Dad added, quietly, cutting his roast into perfect cubes like he always did. Leo grinned, and I knew that look. It was the same one he wore before wrecking someone on the field. "Yeah, I figured. You don't exactly scream artsy, Mr. Hanley. No offense." I kicked him under the table, but he kept going. "I mean, some people just have it, you know? And some people," he gestured at Dad's polo shirt, "some people do taxes." "Leo," I hissed. But part of me was embarrassed too. Why couldn't Dad be cooler? Why did he have to wear those awful transition lenses? Mom shot me a look across the table. There was something behind her eyes I'd never seen before. When I tried to change the subject, she reached over and pinched my elbow. Not hard, but enough to mean, "Sit still, don't speak." Leo was still going. "Actually, I've got my guitar in the car. Maybe I can show you what real music sounds like. Might blow your mind, Mr. H." Dad just kept eating. "That's not necessary." "No, seriously, I insist." He couldn't be more uncynical. Leo was already standing. "Maya's always saying you guys don't get music. Maybe I can educate you a little." I wanted to disappear. I never said that. Okay, maybe I said once that my parents only listened to NPR, but that's different. Leo came back with his guitar and amp. He set it up right there in the dining room like it was a stage. "This is called Thunderstruck." What came out of the amp definitely wasn't Thunderstruck. It was noise, bad noise. He was hitting the strings like they'd insulted his mom. Pretty sick, right? He transitioned into what I think was supposed to be Sweet Child O' Mine, but it sounded more like a blender fighting a cat. Bet you've never heard this in suburbia. This is what separates real musicians from the wannabes. I started to get up and stop the disaster, but Mom clamped her hand over my wrist. She shook her head, just once. Dad hadn't moved, still looking down at his plate. Leo cranked the amp louder. "Come on, H-Dog, don't be shy. I know you're dying to try. Here." He actually tried to hand Dad the guitar. "Play something. Riptide, maybe?" That's when Dad finally looked up. His eyes were sharp, focused in a way I'd never seen before. "You're done?" Leo laughed. "What, did I hurt your feelings? Sorry, man, but this is the real world. Some of us are built for greatness, and some of us," he looked Dad up and down, "some of us are built for spreadsheets." Mom stood and went to the hall closet. I heard her rummaging. When she came back, she was holding a guitar case I'd never seen before. It was worn, plastered with faded stickers I couldn't quite read. "Aaron," Dad said quietly. She replied simply and opened the case. Inside was a black guitar that looked like it had seen war. She passed it to Dad like she was handing over something sacred, a weapon. I watched my boring, beige minivan driving father plug into Leo's amp. He didn't look at the dials. He just adjusted them like muscle memory. His posture changed. His fingers landed on the neck like they were returning home. The sound that came out of the amp made Leo's performance sound like a toddler attacking a toy xylophone. Dad's fingers moved so fast they blurred. The sound was massive, flawless, and a little terrifying. He played for maybe 2 minutes. Complex runs, lightning solos, things I'd only ever heard on classic rock stations, never imagined could come from an actual person. That college fund, Dad said, still playing, didn't come from accounting. 3 platinum albums in the 90s, toured with legends, gave it all up the day you were born, because being your dad mattered more than being famous. Leo practically bolted out of the house. I just sat there, staring at this stranger wearing my father's face. Mom squeezed my shoulder. "Now you know," she whispered. I didn't realize it then, but whatever Dad had said during that solo had cut Leo deeply, and he was about to use it to burn everything down. I watched Leo's taillights vanish at the end of our quiet street, while Dad stood in the doorway, still holding that war-scarred guitar. His hands trembled slightly as he unplugged the amp and gently laid the instrument back into its case. Under the porch light, I could finally read the stickers I hadn't been able to decipher earlier. Backstage passes from legendary venues I'd only seen in documentaries. Mom began clearing the table, stacking the dishes with a little more force than necessary. Dad moved to help, but she waved him off. The silence in our dining room felt like the air right before a thunderstorm. I stayed frozen in my seat, trying to process what I had just witnessed. My dad, the guy who color-coded his sock drawer, had just played guitar like an immortal. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Leo lit up the screen. Just 3 words. I felt my stomach drop. Grabbing my phone, I ran upstairs, 2 steps at a time. From my bedroom window, I saw Dad walk out to the garage. He stood there a moment, staring into the dark, then went inside and closed the door behind him. The next morning came too fast. I found Dad at the kitchen table, in his usual khakis and polo, reading the paper like nothing had happened. Mom poured orange juice without meeting either of our eyes. The guitar case was nowhere to be seen. At school, I spotted Leo's car in the lot, but he wasn't at his usual spot near the trophy case. I checked my phone. He had just posted something on Instagram. My stomach turned as the view count ticked higher in real time. The photo was of our beige minivan, parked out front. The caption was smug and brutal. My cheeks burned as I read the comments, classmates piling on, laughing. I found Leo at his locker, surrounded by his football crew. The moment he saw me, he raised his voice for the whole hallway to hear, throwing out cruel jokes, mocking my family, lobbing accusations like grenades. The crowd thickened, drawn to the drama. My fists clenched. Without thinking, I shoved my way into the circle and slammed him hard against the lockers. Gasps and whispers filled the hall. Someone brought up my grandfather's funeral, something I hadn't talked about in 2 years, like they were trying to dig up every buried piece of me. Leo straightened his Letterman jacket and smirked like he'd just scored the game-winning touchdown. The bell rang. Everyone scattered. We stood there alone in the fading noise of the hallway. Jess found me in the bathroom during second period. I was still shaking, splashing cold water on my face. She bit her lip. "I need something from Coach Martin. For my scholarship app. He knows people at my dream school. And he's Leo's dad." Her eyes were pleading, miserable. She was stuck between her future and her loyalty to me. I told her I understood, even though it felt like one more betrayal. While Jess apologized, Leo texted again. This time it was clear. He was enjoying this, every second of it. I had to make a choice. Confront him now and risk lighting the whole school on fire, or help Jess meet her deadline and buy Leo more time to spread his poison. I chose Jess. While I sat with her in the library, helping polish her essay, Leo was busy screenshotting our old messages, ones I sent in moments of frustration, normal teenage rants. By lunch, he'd carefully clipped texts, lines I barely remember writing, spun to sound like I hated my family. Without context, they were brutal. 3 things hit me during 6th period. First, a notification that Leo's Instagram story about Dad had been reshared by what felt like half the school. Second, an email from my college interviewer. She introduced herself as Leo's aunt and said she looked forward to meeting me next week. Third, a text from Mom.
After school,
I stopped by Dad's office to drop off the lunch Mom had forgotten to pack. I snapped a quick selfie with him without even thinking and posted it. My location services were still on. Within minutes, Leo's friends were commenting that they recognized the building. I deleted the post immediately, but the screenshots were already out in the wild. The next day delivered a fresh wave of drama. At lunch, someone asked why Leo and I had broken up. I made an offhand comment about his dad's drinking, not expecting it to go anywhere. 3 tables away, Leo turned ghost pale and started hyperventilating. The cafeteria went dead silent as he clutched his chest, clearly struggling to breathe. Teachers rushed in, students filmed everything on their phones. By the time the nurse arrived, the mood had flipped entirely. Everyone's sympathy was with Leo. That night at dinner, my younger brother wouldn't stop talking about how cool Leo was for helping him with football tryouts last month. He didn't understand why I was suddenly being so mean to someone who'd been nothing but nice. Across the table, Mom and Dad exchanged uneasy looks. 2 days later, I found something that made my blood run cold. Leo had left his backpack in my car after practice, and through the clear front pocket, I could see it. My diary, the one I thought was lost weeks ago. Pages of my private thoughts, clearly visible, including some about Dad. Taking it back would technically be theft, and Leo would know I'd gone through his stuff. What stuck with me most, though, was how Mom had known exactly where Dad's old guitar was hidden, and how quickly she'd moved to bring it out, even when Dad clearly didn't want that part of himself resurfaced. It was like she'd been waiting, like she needed me to see it, like she knew that moment was coming and had prepared for it. I chose to document everything instead. The next morning, I got to school early and tried to snap a picture of Leo's locker combination as he opened it. The school counselor caught me crouched with my phone out and flagged it as concerning behavior. She gently asked if I wanted to talk about what was going on. That evening, Leo's mother called our house. Dad answered. I heard him explain, stiffly, that yes, he'd been handling her tax records for the divorce. She needed 3 years of financial files, and he was the only one with access. The conversation was polite, but Dad's voice was tight the entire time. The next day, Mom's sister called. She meant well, but she brought up how I acted after Grandpa's death. Reminded everyone how convinced I'd been that people were lying to me. Her words were gentle but cut deep. The comparison felt cruel and uncomfortably accurate. Back at school, the group chats had turned into a minefield. Leo had mastered the art of screenshotting old conversations and stripping them of context. Then he'd add just enough fake concern, worried about her, to make himself look like the heartbroken ex. Anytime I tried to defend myself, I came off angry and erratic. It made things worse. 3 different teachers pulled me aside after Leo reported my Instagram posts as cyberbullying. And then things went from worse to worse. I found out Leo still had access to our family's Spotify account. He started playing Dad's old tracks at parties, joking that he discovered them online. His snide remarks about Dad trading stardom for suburbia spread like wildfire through our social circles. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I passed out in chemistry, then history, then English, my head hitting the desk each time. Eventually, the teacher started talking, comparing notes. The school nurse pulled me in. She asked me softly if everything was okay at home, her tone skating around the question of whether I was using something. And then Jess officially pulled the plug. Her boyfriend had threatened to break up with her if she stayed involved in my mess. She hugged me in the parking lot, crying so hard she couldn't get the words out. She said she loved me, but she couldn't lose him over this. I told her I understood, even though it felt like another crack forming beneath my feet, another piece of my world splintering. It hit rock bottom when someone showed Mom a thread from the local Moms Facebook group. They were talking about me, about that unstable Delaney Val who was harassing the star quarterback. One of Mom's friends had screenshotted the conversation and sent it just so we could know. Mom's face went sheet white as she read the comments. Comment after comment, women she knew from PTA meetings and neighborhood barbecues, tearing into me like I was a threat to the community. Leo's next move was especially cruel. He claimed I'd accidentally left my diary at his house during a study session. When mutual friends asked for details, he fumbled just enough with the dates to match up with the night we'd actually studied for finals. It was the perfect lie, grounded in just enough truth to be believable. My college counselor called me into her office to review my applications. She brought it up gently, almost apologetically, that Leo's father was a respected alumnus at my top choice school. His recommendation carried real weight for students from our region. She didn't have to say it directly. The threat was there, floating just under the surface. I thought I'd finally caught Leo in a lie when I discovered he hadn't been at football practice the previous Tuesday, despite what he'd claimed. But exposing that meant admitting I'd skipped my SAT prep class to track him down. The attendance records implicated us both. When I let out a small, involuntary smile, relieved to have caught him in something, the yearbook photographer happened to snap a candid shot. Out of context, it looked like I was celebrating his downfall. That evening, Leo sent me a text that summed everything up perfectly. We're both too deep in now. Can't stop, even if we wanted to. It was true. We were locked in mutual destruction, both unwilling to blink, both too proud and too wounded to step away. His new girlfriend from the swim team started wearing one of Dad's old band tees to practice. She'd quote lyrics at team dinners, lines I recognized, while flashing smug smiles in my direction. Worse, she and Leo posted photos from local music venues, tagging them with captions referencing Dad's washed-up career. Even my teammates started choosing sides. Morning practices turned into quiet war zones, everyone avoiding eye contact, walking on eggshells. Then came the college interview. Leo and I ended up in the same waiting room. The history between our families hovered in the air like toxic smoke. We gave the interviewer, who of course was close friends with both our moms, two completely different stories. She looked so confused by the end, trying to reconcile our accounts, that it was obvious neither of us was coming out ahead. My phone buzzed. A notification. My hands went cold. Leo had submitted his college essay to the school's public writing showcase, and our classmates were already sharing it. The essay painted me as emotionally manipulative, a girl who hid behind a picture-perfect family while emotionally gutting her boyfriend. The worst part? He'd embedded my own words in it. Texts I'd written on bad days, venting in moments of frustration, lines where I'd called Dad pathetic, ripped from all context, weaponized against me. That night at dinner, my younger brother started asking questions clearly planted by Leo during those football practices. He asked why I'd made Dad quit music. The accusation echoed through the room. Mom set down her fork carefully. Dad didn't say anything. His jaw clenched, but he kept eating. The silence was worse than yelling. My brother didn't mean harm, but his innocent parroting of Leo's poison landed harder than any direct insult. The next morning, a neighbor pulled Mom aside. She'd seen the Ring doorbell footage someone had forwarded, footage from my fight with Leo at school. It clearly showed me as the aggressor, me shoving him, while Leo stood there wide-eyed and still. The detail I'd conveniently left out when recounting the story now existed in high definition, a perfect digital record of my unraveling. The school administration called for a meeting. They wanted to discuss my pattern of aggressive behavior and how it might be affecting Leo's athletic performance. Then, I found out Leo had screen recorded Dad's guitar solo, the one that night in our dining room. But the clips he posted to TikTok were edited, chopped up, spliced with skeptical commentary. Comments flooded in accusing Dad of faking it, saying it was lip-synced, staged. What had once been a genuine emotional moment, Dad reclaiming something sacred, was now just more fuel for the fire, another example of how our family was built on lies. I managed to access Leo's Google Drive for a few minutes using the shared folders we'd created ages ago. Inside, I found multiple drafts of his college essay, carefully curated versions designed to maximize pity for him while painting me as unstable and vindictive. For a moment, I felt hope, proof. But that hope dissolved when I remembered Leo would see that someone had accessed the files. He'd know it was me. Sure enough, the next day he posted a story accusing me of stalking him. Again. The school counselor mandated regular sessions. When someone anonymously reported that I had scratches on my arms, just from our cat, they suddenly became a concern for possible self-harm. The scratches, harmless on any other day, now took on a new meaning in the eyes of the adults watching me slowly fall apart. Every session with the school counselor meant more documentation, another entry in a growing file that Leo could weaponize, more evidence of instability for him to point to whenever convenient. One afternoon, I tried to record Leo during a run-in near the trophy case. I kept my phone hidden in my pocket, capturing audio as he leaned in and whispered threats, his plan to ruin my family's reputation, step by step. But the reflection in the glass gave me away. He saw the screen light up. He stepped back dramatically, feigning shock. "Are you recording me?" Another public spectacle, another PR win for Leo, another strike against my credibility. Then there was the carpool torture. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Leo picked up my brother for football practice. I watched from the kitchen window as they laughed, tossing a ball in the driveway or exchanging inside jokes. My brother glowed around him in a way he didn't with me anymore. Mom never acknowledged my clenched fists as Leo's car pulled away with my brother riding shotgun. Then, the band teacher, one of the few people who might have verified that Dad had once been something extraordinary, abruptly became unavailable. An anonymous complaint had surfaced accusing him of inappropriate attention toward students. It threatened his tenure. He didn't say much, but the message was clear. He couldn't afford to get involved. Another ally lost. Leo's next move? A curated nostalgia bomb. He started posting old photos from our relationship. In one, he wore the vintage tour tee I'd given him for his birthday, Dad's band shirt from the 90s. The caption said he missed better times with the Delaney family. Hundreds of comments flooded in. Sympathy, admiration, support. All about how hard Leo had tried to fit in with my complicated home life. Then came the offer. Through a mutual friend, Leo made his terms known. If I publicly apologized, he would delete everything. The photos, the screenshots, the accusations. All I had to do was admit I'd lied. Say I'd pretended my parents were boring to seem relatable, that I'd hidden Dad's past on purpose to manipulate Leo's feelings. I refused. Within hours, Leo spun my silence into a self-righteous refusal to take responsibility. Too proud to tell the truth, he wrote. Then the ground shifted. I discovered the practice schedule I'd been using to track Leo's whereabouts was outdated. The team had changed their routine weeks ago, which meant the alibi I'd used to prove he'd stolen my diary fell apart. Now, I didn't look like someone exposing the truth. I looked like someone grasping at straws, desperate, vindictive, wrong. The addict changed everything and nothing. While looking for more proof about Dad's music career, I found it. His old recording contract. The numbers were staggering. A multi-million-dollar deal. He'd walked away from it the day I was born. A handwritten note in the margin simply read, "Emma, born today. Easy choice." It should have cleared everything up. It should have made Dad a hero. Instead, Leo twisted it again. He told people Dad was selfish, that he'd abandoned his bandmates in their dreams, that he traded artistry for beige suburbia and never looked back. Even the screenshots I'd been collecting, texts and posts that showed Leo's obsessive behavior, turned against me when examined out of context. What I saw as control and manipulation, others saw as a caring boyfriend, asking simple questions, curious, concerned, supportive. Next to my own behavior, snooping, tracking, confronting him in public, Leo looked like the victim. Mom faced an impossible decision. 3 of her therapy clients brought up the rumors, asking if the drama involved her family.
Her practice demanded neutrality. Her career depended on discretion. In the end, she chose distance. Publicly, she remained quiet. Privately, she offered help, but only within carefully drawn lines. It felt like another betrayal, even though I knew why she did it. I created fake accounts, watched Leo's posts from behind borrowed usernames, liked supportive comments, reported ones that painted me in a bad light. I even joined in, posting replies that subtly defended my version of events. At first, it felt strategic, necessary. But then I realized I was becoming exactly what Leo accused me of being: a manipulator hiding behind masks. A chance running at the grocery store gave me an opening to plant seeds of doubt with Leo's mom. I told her, gently, how worried I was about the pressure Leo had been under lately. I kept my tone light, casual, just concerned between two people who cared about the same boy. Her maternal instincts kicked in as I carefully wove narrative. Two teenagers caught in something that had spiraled beyond their control. It felt like a small win, until I saw Leo's next post. He accused me of harassing his family. The timing was brutal. Meanwhile, I found an old iPad backup that contains deleted texts I'd forgotten existed, conversations from better days, messages where Leo promised to protect my family's secrets, and I reassured him that Dad's past didn't matter to me. But I only accessed them using our old shared Apple ID before Leo remembered to change the password. That small window of opportunity added even more pressure to my already fractured days. Then, Leo's father entered the battlefield. As the football coach, he didn't have to say much. The message was clear: stay out of this, or your brother's time on the field disappears. A quiet, elegant threat. And suddenly, my loyalty was split between protecting my family's truth and protecting my brother's future. The championship game arrived while I was across town, trying to intercept Leo's latest scheme. I missed everything. My brother scored the winning touchdown. Leo was there to lift him into the air. Photos hit social media within minutes. My brother and Leo grinning on the field, arms slung around each other, while I was nowhere to be seen. That night, my brother texted me just one sentence: "At least Leo showed up." Financial pressure mounted. I maxed out my credit card, paying for data recovery services. Leo dipped into his college fund for legal consultations. We were both bleeding money we didn't have. It felt ridiculous and inevitable. Economic warfare in a battle we couldn't stop fighting. The fall festival turned into a disaster. We ran into each other at the face painting booth. Words flew. The argument escalated. Children in line started crying. Parents grabbed their hands and pulled them away from the wreckage of our rage. The confrontation ended up in the local Facebook group. Again. Some called me unstable. Others called Leo a manipulator. My position in the National Honor Society vanished after a vote on conduct unbecoming of a member. Leo's new girlfriend was appointed as my replacement. She smiled as the announcement was made. It felt like a knife to the chest. Years of academic work, gone in minutes. Another sacrifice to this war we were both too broken to stop fighting. The night I slept in my car was my bottom. Mom and Dad's argument echoed through the house. Dad's voice, usually calm, was raised for the first time in years. Accusations, guilt, desperation. I grabbed my keys and left, parked in the lot of a 24-hour grocery store. Sat alone under buzzing lights, the air stale with exhaustion. The next morning, Leo posted about being worried for his ex's mental health. The post included a photo of my car in the lot. Someone had recognized it and sent it to him. Then came the call from my grandmother. She sobbed as she asked me to stop destroying the life Dad had built for us. She reminded me of everything he gave up to be boring, that he could have been famous, rich, but chose instead to give me something safer. Her words hit harder than any of Leo's attacks. I'd strayed so far from protecting my family, I was tearing it apart. And then I learned the worst of it. My search for holes in Leo's alibi led me to Jess's mom's workplace. She worked at a bank, the kind of job where reputation is everything. My questions about her whereabouts on specific dates triggered a quiet internal investigation. Jess's message came late that night. She hasn't stopped crying. What did you do? I hadn't meant to hurt anyone. But the damage spread fast, like smoke under every door. Jess's parents started arguing. Their marriage, once my childhood example of stability, began to falter. And I still couldn't stop. even knowing what it was costing. Then Dad asked me something during a rare quiet moment in the garage. He said, "Do you think maybe Leo is just a kid in pain? That maybe you both are, hurt, confused, both trying to win something that doesn't exist?" I couldn't answer because, deep down, I knew he might be right, and his quiet wisdom felt like a lifeline, one I was too proud to grab. My public admission that I'd lied to spy on Leo was supposed to be a turning point, a gesture of honesty, to reclaim some credibility. Instead, it became more fuel for his narrative. The truth, once spoken, turned into a weapon, twisted and sharpened into something unrecognizable, now part of Leo's ever-growing arsenal. Then the TikTok videos resurfaced, the ones I'd posted weeks before everything imploded. Clips where I'd mocked our painfully boring family dinners. The footage, so casual at the time, now read like evidence, proof that I had started the cycle of disrespect. My own words betrayed me. My claims of victimhood were suddenly undermined by a record of casual cruelty, of teenage sarcasm that no longer felt harmless. Then came the cease and desist. The school's legal team, acting under pressure from Leo's family, delivered a formal notice, harassment allegations, official language, threats of litigation. My parents had to hire a lawyer. They canceled their 25th anniversary trip to pay the retainer. I watched guilt settle like dust over Dad's usually immaculate desk, now buried in legal paperwork. Another battlefield in a war no one was winning. The most surreal moment came during a school-mediated session. Leo admitted his motives. He said he'd always felt lesser than, overshadowed by what he saw as my perfect life, my family, my father's mystery. His revenge, he confessed, came from a place of pain, wounded pride, and a desperate need to be accepted by a family he thought was too good for him. The complexity didn't excuse him, but it made him human, and that somehow made everything harder. I felt myself changing. The girl who used to spend weekends walking shelter dogs and organizing donation drives had become someone who made lists of weaknesses, who mapped emotional targets like a general planning strikes. Cold, strategic, necessary, maybe, but looking in the mirror started to feel like facing a stranger. I got Leo's updated practice schedule from his little sister, who had a crush on my brother. The information felt dirty, tainted by manipulation. Another small betrayal in a chain of many. Even our victories began to feel like losses. The day I saw Leo crying during his parents' divorce hearing should have felt like payback, but all I felt was hollow. I had helped accelerate that outcome, and the image of him breaking down left no satisfaction, just a gnawing sense that we were both casualties of something we created. Later that week, I proved Leo had lied about something trivial, one of his countless online claims. But the moment felt empty, insignificant against the destruction we'd already caused. His narrative of being emotionally manipulated by my fake family was simpler than mine, and people gravitate to simple stories. His version fit a neat arc. Girl lies about family, boy feels betrayed, boy fights back. Mine required too much nuance, too much backstory. And no one on social media has time for that. Everything began to hinge on whether Dad would go public about his past. The man who had chosen privacy over fame, anonymity over applause, was now faced with exposing his history to clear my name. Asking him to do that felt heavier than anything Leo had thrown at me. The tutoring sessions I'd done with Leo's sister came back to bite me. She asked me wide-eyed why I said Leo deserved better during one of our sessions. I had no memory of saying it, but if I had, it was probably during one of those complicated moments where empathy and conflict overlapped. Now, it was more fuel for Leo's claim that I'd manipulated him from the start. Teachers began picking sides, subtly but noticeably. Recommendation letters, committee appointments, leadership roles, everything tilted based on which of us looked more promising on paper. Even that felt like war. The revelation about defamation law was the final blow to my hopes for vindication. I learned that proving Leo wrong wasn't enough. I'd have to prove he knew he was wrong when he said it. But he believed his own version. Twisted, yes, but genuine in his mind. And that belief made him legally untouchable. Dad's old manager, someone he'd once quietly paid for rehab, offered some relief. When I contacted him, he confirmed what I always suspected. Dad walked away from the music industry to save our family before it even began. He said it was the smartest thing he'd ever seen anyone do. Fame eats people alive. But the manager's legal issues meant he couldn't testify on our behalf. Another voice silenced, another potential ally gone. The fact that Leo's dad used football playing time as leverage against my brother kept resurfacing in my thoughts. How many adults had now been pulled into what started as teenage drama? How many were making strategic moves in a war they pretended wasn't happening? The evidence kept building, showing that Dad had turned down reunion tours not once, not twice, but 3 times so he could be there for me. Recitals, games, school events. Each rejection came with heavy financial penalties that he paid without complaint. The sacrifice went deeper than I'd ever imagined. But Leo twisted it, framing Dad's choices as selfishness, as if Dad had forced us into false poverty to protect his ego. Then I found the contract, the one that revealed Dad's old bandmates had sued him after he quit. They'd claimed breach of contract and loss of earnings. The settlement had come out of savings meant for other dreams. Dad had chosen family peace over financial comfort, and he'd never told us. It was one more secret he carried to protect the quiet, stable life he'd worked so hard to build. Then, Mom found something else. Letters between Dad and the record label. Pleas for release from contracts that would have kept him on tour through my early childhood. The notes weren't just formal, they were deeply personal, full of grief and longing. In one letter, he wrote, "Fame is temporary. Emma is forever." That should have ended it. That truth should have destroyed Leo's narrative. But by then, Leo had already poisoned public opinion. The story people wanted, the one where I came from lies and manipulation, had taken root. Reality didn't matter anymore. Still, I finally understood. The khakis, the minivan, the endless routines and ordinary dinners. They weren't signs of dullness. They were signs of devotion. Each one a conscious daily choice to be present, to be safe, to be here. And I realized it too late. The evidence about Dad's rejected reunion tours came from an unexpected source, his former drummer. He reached out to me on social media after seeing Leo's posts. He shared documentation of 3 separate comeback offers Dad had turned down. Each one aligned perfectly with the moment in my life: a science fair, a dance recital, my middle school graduation. Each offer had been worth more than our house. I printed everything. At dawn, I drove to Leo's house and parked across the street. His car was in the driveway beside his mom's SUV. I waited until I saw movement in the kitchen window. Then I walked up and slid the envelope under their door. No confrontation, no fireworks. Just truth. Later that day, I found the old lawsuit paperwork in one of Mom's filing cabinets. The pages were yellowed, but the numbers were still stark. Dad had paid $47,000 out of his retirement savings to settle with his former bandmates. I saw the payment schedule. Each monthly installment aligned with the time Dad had taken on seasonal tax work, back when I thought he was just overcommitted. Mom discovered me reading the documents and sat beside me with a heavy sigh. She brought more. Letters, emails, old notes Dad had written in hotel rooms while on tour. One described missing my first steps. Another detailed how he'd performed while I was home with pneumonia. The final letter, dated the day after I was born, simply read, "This is final. I choose her." Then came Leo's downfall, born from his own arrogance. During a school assembly, while casually talking with friends near an open mic, he said it. I might have exaggerated some of the stuff about her family, but it made the story better. His voice echoed through the sound system. Phones recorded everything. The clips hit my inbox within minutes. I didn't post them. I just saved them, along with everything else, onto a flash drive. The temptation to destroy him was overwhelming, but I kept thinking about what Dad had said, that Leo might just be a kid in pain, a kid who made terrible choices because he didn't know what else to do. My hands shook as I sealed the flash drive in an envelope. The mediation session was scheduled for Monday. Both families received formal notices. The district wanted this resolved before it got worse. I spent the weekend organizing evidence, building timelines, preparing to fight. But every time I looked at the old guitar case leaning in the corner of my room, I felt something shift. That case was never just an instrument. It was a monument to everything Dad had given up. On Sunday night, I made a different choice. I took the envelope, wrote Leo's name on it, and slipped the flash drive inside. I added a handwritten note. I have everything I need to destroy you, but I'm not going to. Not for you, for me. This ends here. Monday morning was gray and drizzling. The mediation room felt suffocating with both families packed inside. Leo's mother sat stiffly beside mine, years of strained friendship visible in the distance between their shoulders. Dad wore his usual khakis, but this time he added a blazer. Leo's father kept glancing at his phone, probably monitoring football updates. He barely looked up during the session. The mediator, a retired judge hired by the district, sat at the head of the table, calmly flipping through the thick folders of complaints and evidence. There was no illusion. Both Leo and I looked wrecked. I'd lost weight. My hair was thinning at the temples. Leo's usual swagger had turned into jittery energy. His leg bounced relentlessly under the table. Jess and her parents arrived halfway through. Her mom's eyes were raw from crying. The investigation at her workplace had cleared her, but the damage had been done. Jess sat close to her parents, shrinking into herself, unable to meet my eyes. The school representatives presented their findings. The conflict had become a disruption far beyond us. Attendance records showed how many classes Leo and I had missed. Our grades had cratered. The counselor read her notes aloud, outlining patterns of troubling behavior on both sides. When the mediator asked us to speak, I reached into my folder and pulled out the envelope with Leo's name. I slid it across the table. His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was the flash drive and the handwritten note. I watched his face shift, confusion, anxiety, then something else, something closer to relief. His confession came slowly, broken into fragments at first. He talked about feeling fake around my family, how my offhand remark about Dad that night had cracked something in him, how it confirmed years of quiet insecurity. He spoke of his parents' failing marriage, his father's drinking, the pressure of being the golden boy, of needing to matter somewhere to someone. And I found myself responding, not out of strategy, but because it was time. I told them how Dad's secret had shaken everything I thought I understood, how Leo's attacks had felt like proof that I hadn't been worthy of the life Dad gave up. Our war, I said, had stopped being about truth a long time ago. It had become a contest to prove who deserved to be loved more. The mediator offered a resolution, firm, structured, and final. Mutual restraining orders. No contact, no messaging, no social media interaction. Mandatory counseling for both of us. Transfers to different schools, Leo to the district's alternative program, me to the arts magnet across town. Legal fees would be handled by our respective families, disciplinary records sealed to protect college admissions. No profit from the story allowed. No books, no interviews, no monetized content. It would be over. Then Dad spoke. He didn't say much, but what he said landed. He confirmed the truth. Yes, he'd been a musician. Yes, he'd left it behind. Yes, it was his decision. And yes, the choice was always Emma. He looked at Leo's parents, not with bitterness, but with quiet honesty, and acknowledged how much hurt had passed between both families. His voice carried the weight of someone who truly understood what it meant to give something up. Leo's mother broke down. She apologized to my parents, crying as she admitted that she'd always wondered about Dad, about the calm, quiet man who did their taxes and never talked about himself. The idea that he'd once been a rock star was surreal, she said. But the idea that he gave it all up, that made more sense than anything. The fallout in the community was immediate. The yearbook committee couldn't agree, so they split the dedication page. Half for Team Emma, half for Team Leo. Friends chose sides based on their own families, their own definitions of right and wrong. The local Facebook groups lit up for weeks, debating whether Dad's sacrifice was noble or foolish. I started at the Arts Magnet School after winter break. It meant a longer commute. Dad started driving me every morning. My hair came our time, quiet, unhurried. He'd play old songs from his band, never talked much. He didn't need to. The music said enough. Leo transferred to the alternative school. We rarely crossed paths. Mutual friends said he was doing better. He'd stopped chasing attention, focused on classes. His parents finalized their divorce quietly. His mom kept the house. His dad moved into an apartment near the school. My brother didn't take it well. Leo had been his hero, the kind of older figure every little brother looks up to. Understanding the layers of what had happened between us was too much. He quit football, said it wasn't fun anymore. Instead, Dad began teaching him guitar, passing down what he'd hidden for so long. Slowly, patiently. Like he was ready to share, one string at a time. Senior year became a logistical headache. The restraining orders meant we couldn't attend school events together. Pep rallies, award ceremonies, even the senior breakfast, all had to be coordinated. Administrators drew up seating charts that looked like military blueprints. The principal joked that managing our conflict was now her second full-time job. Therapy helped, though healing was slow. It took months to fully grasp how love could twist into destruction, how intimacy could become a weapon when filtered through insecurity. My therapist specialized in adolescent trauma. Together, we started untangling the knot of loyalty, identity, and pain that had shaped everything. At home, Dad started playing guitar more often. Nothing theatrical, just soft strumming after dinner, weekend sessions in the garage. Sometimes Mom would sing along, surprising all of us with the voice that had been hidden for years. The music that had once been secret became part of our daily rhythm. Quiet, constant, healing. 6 months later, at the regional college fair, I saw Leo across the crowded gym. Our eyes met, just for a moment. We didn't speak, didn't approach, just a nod, and silent acknowledgement of what had passed between us, a mutual recognition of the damage done and the growth that followed. He turned toward the business school tables. I headed toward the arts programs. Our paths diverged naturally, shaped by what we'd been through, but no longer defined by it. Our families carried the scars, but we weren't broken, just changed. Dad's past, once hidden, had transformed from a secret into a source of pride. His decision to lead the stage wasn't about giving up dreams. It was about choosing better ones. The man in khakis who drove a minivan and wore transition lenses had given me something rare, proof that love doesn't always need to shine. Sometimes it just needs to stay. The remnants of our mutual destruction lived on in sealed school records and wiped Instagram accounts. Leo and I had both learned that knowing someone's soft spots came with responsibility, and that betrayal, when it came from someone who knows you, cuts deeper than any stranger ever could. We had tested the boundaries of teenage cruelty and found them alarmingly easy to cross. Our story became a whisper in hallways, a cautionary tale. the quiet girl with the father who played guitar like a legend, the golden boy quarterback who crumbled under pressure. Everyone involved turned out to be more complicated than they first appeared. College acceptance letters arrived in the spring. We were going to different schools, in different states. The distance felt right, a literal separation that mirrored the emotional space we needed to heal, a reset. Dad drove me to freshman orientation in the same old minivan, loaded with bins of bedding and notebooks and nerves. As we pulled into campus, he turned off the radio, glanced at me. His expression was pride, shaded with concern. The look of a man who had given up the world so he could be there for this moment. And I finally understood. His ordinary life was a radical act, a deliberate choice made day after day to be present. The khakis, the car, the calm, all armor against a world obsessed with flash and noise. The war with Leo had taught me that love and hate weren't opposites. They were neighbors. That the people who know you best can hurt you worst. But also that choosing peace over victory, quiet over spectacle, family over fame, those were the choices that built a life worth living.